Chuck, we're going to now shift over to our session on successful virtual events that did take place last year. If you could highlight or spotlight, excuse me, we have two panelists up right now on the call. Our third panelist, Sam Accardi, he is having some major internet problems, so we're gonna rearrange some of our panelists a little bit for this next session, and hopefully he's going to be able to join us in time for the session. So we're going to start off with Kate Todd. Kate is here in Colorado with us. She is the event planner at Greenhouse Scholars, which is an education nonprofit that supports low-income, high-achieving students throughout their college careers. She is the sole event planner for her organization, and for those of us planning multiple events, you know how stressful that is. So not only is she doing that educational nonprofit work through events, she is also the event director for the Venus de Miles, which is Colorado's original and largest all-women's non-competitive cycling ride. She's been at the helm of this event, which has taken place both in Colorado and Illinois since 2017. And prior to that, she's worked in event services at the Copper Mountain Resort, and she acted as the mountain liaison for the large-scale cycling events such as Colorado Classic and Copper Triangle. So go ahead and take it away, Kate.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Tara. That was a nice introduction. So yeah, I plan Venus de Miles. Like Tara said, we're Colorado's largest and original all-women's cycling event. Last year was our 14th year. We've been in Colorado since 2008. And we switched to a fully virtual event about 30 days prior to the event. So had planned for about 12 months to do a completely in-person event and then made the shift 30 days ahead of time. What we found worked really well. Obviously, I think that everybody has found this is communication. So continuing to communicate with our riders, making sure that our riders knew that we had a plan, always communicating our potential COVID plan along the way as we were planning our in-person event. And then when we switched to fully virtual, making sure that that went out via social media, via email, all of our channels to make sure that our riders knew. For us, something that's really important to our community, because we are a non-competitive ride, it's not about finishing and it's not about your time, it's about bringing everybody together as a community. So for us, our biggest challenge was how do we bring together a large group of women and make them still feel that community when you're not in person. And some of the things that worked really well for us were social media, of course, using Facebook. We created a Facebook event group that everybody could join. We allowed people to add to the feed and to be able to track their photos and their images and see where everybody was there. And then we also used Ride with GPS as a collective for our routes. So people were able to submit their routes where they were riding all over, not just all over Colorado, but all over the United States. We had a lot of international or national riders join us as well. People could submit their routes to our collection, and then you could see where other riders were riding throughout the US on event day. I would say probably the biggest challenge for us was certainly that 30-day mark. I think everybody probably experienced this last year as well, but just the constant changing of regulations and not knowing what to expect. So having a couple people, you know, be upset obviously that we had made this change, but we've been communicating it all along. And we're really proud of what happened. We were able to retain 84% of our attendees from 2019 to 2020. So we still had 84% of people ride with us. We did not offer refunds. Because we are an education nonprofit, we gave people the opportunity to either donate their registration if they didn't want to ride with us virtually, or to defer their registration to 2020. And 80% of our riders continued to ride with us regardless. So only 20% deferred to 2021. 80% of them decided to continue with us even after we made that switch to virtual. So we're really proud of that.
Great, thanks, Kate. And what are your plans going into 2021 as you saw success in the virtual realm of cycling?
Yeah, we're really excited about 2021, just with what we've learned from the potential of a virtual ride. So we are moving forward with an in-person ride this year, but we are also moving forward with a virtual option. We found the biggest thing for us was that it was a great opportunity to engage our supporters for Greenhouse Scholars and spread the word about Greenhouse Scholars across the nation, but also to be able to engage women cyclists across the nation. So we're going to offer a virtual event. We'll do something similar with the collection of rides on Ride with GPS, allowing people to submit their rides. This year, I think I'm also going to use their live tracking. They have a live logging feature on Ride with GPS where people can choose to show their location. So we're working on location services as well, where people could see where everybody is nationally. And then we are upgrading our event website to include a live feed of social media sharing, so that at any given time, you'll be able to log on to our event and automatically see images that have been shared with our particular hashtag. So instead of people having to submit them or add them to an event page, it'll just automatically load. So we're excited. I think that the possibility of a virtual event last year was daunting to make that switch from live to virtual, but this year we're excited about it as an add-on.
Great. And I know when you and I spoke, you mentioned the in-person like start areas that you created for certain groups. Could you maybe mention that like as an additional piece to this virtual element?
Yeah, so we had a lot of groups. I mean, certainly, like I said, a big part of our ride is women creating communities. And so we had different cycling clubs or different groups of women that created their own mini events, and we provided them with essentially like packs of goodies. So swag bags with snacks and things that they could take on their rides. And then people hosted their own little mini starting line. So we had groups of women all over Colorado, and some even, we had a couple groups in Illinois as well that joined us for little mini rides. So we had groups, I think up to 10, because at the time that was what was allowed. And they did little mini starting lines. We sent them signage that along our courses, we're really known for the support along courses. So we sent them signs to put up in at their starting line and along their own individual courses in the groups, the courses that the groups were riding in, to get excited along the course.
That's awesome. And so one more question for you based on our conversation. So you discussed, so really you all, which is really just you at this point in time, went from in-person to virtual on a very, very quick timeline. And, how are you still engaging those folks now? Or, what are your plans to engage through the digital, even if you are running an in-person event in 2021 or beyond?
To engage the virtual riders, you mean?
Yeah, or just, the in-person riders when that time does come.
Yeah, so we're pretty active on social media. I would say that that's probably our biggest benefit, especially because we are sort of that leisure ride that women are excited about. They're excited to share that with their friends. We have an ambassador team that's out there spreading the word about our ride, both virtual and in person. I am excited because I'm going to adopt a monthly open house, virtual open houses. So I'm going to do that once a month, just like this, a Zoom open house where people can come on, our riders, potential riders, supporters, and learn about Venus to Miles, what we're doing for our regulations, how we're handling COVID protocols at the exact moment, because we all know that changes regularly. So that'll be something that we're going to do for sure. I also send out, obviously, regular newsletters. I'm sure everybody does, but doing a monthly newsletter with our current COVID plans, making sure that those are updated on our website.
Great, thanks so much. We are going to move on to our next presenter, and I am glad that he was able to join us. Chuck, if you could highlight Sam, I'm not sure if he's on video or if he's just on voice, but Sam Accardi is the founder and CEO of the cycling event series Bikes and Beers. This event series was founded in 2013 and is based in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Bikes and Beers is one of the fastest growing cycling events in the country. I'm sure you all like bikes and beers. That goes together super duper well. So it seems obvious that this would be one of the fastest growing cycling events around. And every event partners with a local craft brewery and local nonprofit to benefit local businesses and cycling charities. So Sam, if you could tell us a little bit, number one, about your event, because I think people might not be aware of what the event is, and then what you did in 2020 virtually to keep your event going.
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much, Tara, for the intro, and great to meet everyone through Zoom. Sorry I was late. Little technical difficulty. Ironic that I'm speaking about the virtual events, but couldn't get my internet working. Ironic. But so Bikes and Beers, as Tara mentioned, started in 2013. And our main kind of event outline is that we partner with a local craft brewery and we host an event with that brewery. We basically rent out the entire brewery for the day. We get cyclists to come to the brewery. That is the host as the start and finish of the ride. So the ride is fully marked, fully guided. And then when people come back from the ride, we essentially just have an after party at the brewery. The event started in San Diego while I was in graduate school. Huge cyclists out there, and we would just ride to craft breweries, and kind of thought the two went hand in hand, and hosted our first event with Bike SD, and the event really just took off from there. We expected about 100 people, and we had 700 the first year. And then I'm from Philadelphia, so when I moved back, did the same thing here with a couple breweries in Philadelphia, and really, just took off with that. We've been adding 2 to 3 breweries per year. Culminating in 2020, we were scheduled to have 24 events at 24 different breweries all around the country, mostly on the East Coast, up and down the East Coast, but we do host 2 events in California, and then we get as far west as Kalamazoo, Michigan, Nashville, Tennessee. See what else we did. We did a couple in South Carolina, and then we go all the way up to like Vermont. But yeah, so at the start of 2020, we had our entire schedule lined up, and COVID hit the country by storm. We kind of saw the writing on the wall, I want to say. Kind of early on, we started pushing events back, as I'm sure most events did. And then we got to, I want to say it was mid-March that we just decided to launch a virtual event, give people something to stay motivated and, maintain their fitness goals essentially for the rest of the year. We still had physical events on the schedule, but we were just postponing those, and introduced this Bikes and Beers social distancing ride, which is what we called it at the start. Promoted that to all of our fans, not really anyone new. And we reached out to all the breweries that were participating with us, and they jumped on board. They thought it was a great idea. And what we did was create swag packages for all of the riders. And then it actually kind of helped us grow, because we were able to reach out to breweries that didn't do a ride with us in the past, because maybe it was geologically challenging, or, we couldn't bring our whole staff out to Arizona, but we found 10 breweries in Arizona that wanted to partner with us. So in the swag bag, we gave out beer tokens to all of the riders, and they were able to take those tokens to the brewery and redeem for a beer. So it was kind of a mix of virtual events, but then also, they did something physical. They were taking photos with their friends at the brewery. During kind of peak COVID, when we, weren't even comfortable going to a brewery, a lot of the breweries were offering takeout, so they could redeem their 2 tokens for a 6-pack to go. So that was cool. It was a way for people to just, get out, interact with the breweries. And then also during COVID, the breweries were struggling. So it was a way to kind of get people engaged with local breweries. And then obviously we were reimbursing them for those beers that were served. So kind of a win-win on all accounts. But yeah, I want to say that probably by, I want to say June, that was when we made the call to extend this event through the rest of the summer. And then we really started marketing. We got 250 breweries on board, all around all 50 states, 4 international breweries, and really started marketing. We ended up having over 20,000 participants nationwide. Our warehouse basically turned into like a mini fulfillment center. We had 4 full-time staff members just building out packages all day. So it was interesting. We definitely learned from it. I know Tara wanted me to mention some of the challenges with it. Definitely just transitioning from a staff that was an in-person staff. I mean, all we had ever done was physical events, and that was our bread and butter. And then transitioning to all of a sudden, how do we get 20,000 packages across the country? And then obviously we were dealing with issues with the postal service. We were fulfilling them all ourselves, printing all the labels, having USPS pickups. But then, I mean, there were challenges with the postal service during that time in general with mail-in voting. We even ran into the holidays a little bit with some of the packages. So I think the postal service was overwhelmed because of COVID. Obviously, we were all ordering things on Amazon, and packages in general were up, I think 300% with the postal service. So I would say the biggest challenge for us was just the physical swag package, getting it out to people. And then, someone might have moved from the start of the event. There was just lots of challenges logistically with shipping out packages. Another challenge was at the start, we had always kind of known what virtual events were. And I think it was the first time that a lot of organizations were switching to a virtual event. I know when I first heard about them, I was like, why would anyone want to pay to do an event on their own and then get a package in the mail? So that's kind of why we came up with the beer token concept, to just keep people engaged, motivated, and it also added one extra aspect. But as I touched on, it was kind of the beginning of the virtual phase. So there was no real technology out there, I want to say. So we had someone build out an entire website where people could go on, log their mileage. We kind of interfaced it with Strava a little bit, but it was more so our own platform that we had built. We used a company called Caspio, which was a whole learning curve. Had we done it again, I think we would have, opted for something else. But it was, we basically took all of our resources and dedicated it to a solid week of just building out this entire platform. And the riders actually loved it. It was a really cool concept. And yeah, that was pretty much it. What worked well for us was really just the marketing and the participation. Our biggest event before that, a physical event, was 1,400. So this 20,000 person event that was a one-time event was amazing. All of our fans jumped on board, and then anyone that was already pre-registered for a ride, they had the option to defer to 2021 or 2022. So we gave them a 2-year window, any event in those 2 years, or they could opt into the virtual event, and we would send them all of their swag plus the beer tokens, etc. Our conversion rate of people to stay in the event was 72% across all events. So way more than we had thought. We thought, most people are going to defer to next year or the following year, but because it was so far into the virtual event already taking place, people had seen what it was. They saw photos. We did a really cool finisher medal with like a bottle opener on it. So I think that was the main allure, to get people to stay in. And then we also opened it up to a couple of different charities. We were able to donate $24,000 to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation for COVID-19 relief. So that was kind of part of the initial, just the initial promotion, was that the ride would transition to COVID relief as opposed to the cycling charities that we were working with for the individual physical events. So that really, people gravitated towards that, got their friends involved. And then midway through the year, we also introduced a challenge, which was the Climb Everest Challenge. And people had 50 days to climb the elevation of Mount Everest. I know Everesting was a hot trend this year where people were Everesting in one day, but that's not possible for so many people. And honestly, where people live, it's not even possible. So that was a cool challenge that we offered to people where essentially they would sign up, same thing, we would mail them a swag package with a t-shirt, a medal, a couple of our sponsor promotion items. And then they had 50 days, they could go in every day and log, maybe they did a 10-mile ride with 800 feet of elevation. And then they would log that and they could physically see themselves going up the mountain. So that event we had 4,200 people for. And again, it was just a really cool event to make a community of people. And we actually have a Facebook group now that's specifically for these virtual events that has 2,500 people in it. And it's just a very engaged group of people that just is into this whole virtual concept and wants to do these type of events.
And Sam, someone just had a quick question. So not the Everesting, but the other virtual events, how many miles did they end up riding? Like, did you set parameters on that, or did you let people, like in Kate's Venus the Miles virtual event, like people kind of got to choose what they wanted to do because of their local areas? What did you end up doing for that?
It was totally open. You could do any distance that you wanted. For our physical events, it's 15, 30, or 50 miles. So initially the idea was that you had to complete your ride in one ride. So like most virtual events, you go out, you do your 15 miles, you submit your time, and then you would, be placed on a leaderboard. But for this, we opened it up to any distance, and it was more of just a tracking device for people to see how many miles they rode all summer. So there was no minimum, no maximum. It was essentially just a tracking service for them.
Great, thanks. And when we had talked, when we are able to get back to normal, what will you take forward from the 2020 virtual events, or even this front half of 2021 virtual events?
Yeah, so we're definitely continuing it into 2021. I think it's a great alternative for people that don't feel comfortable getting out to a physical event yet, or even some locations aren't allowing it. With us, we're a bit limited because we're working with breweries. So we have to approach a brewery where, maybe their parking lot's not that big, or they don't have a large field, or they just don't feel comfortable having 200 people outside, and, the wrong photo gets published with a bad angle where it looks like everyone's close together, and it causes issues. So we're continuing with 4 virtual events in 2021 and 12 to 16 physical events. So for those, we're going to do 2 challenges and then 2 open events like we did this past year. And I think that I think they'll just be bigger than they were last year. I know there's way more options now, but I think it was an entire learning curve of just what is a virtual event. We even tried to stay away from that word virtual because a lot of people thought it was just an indoor event, on your indoor trainer. They didn't think you could do a virtual event outside on the road. So we played around with that a little bit. That's kind of why we called it the social distancing ride, as opposed to like Bikes and Beers virtual. But yeah, we'll continue with those. I think the challenges are awesome. I mean, something like the Everest Challenge, it's a type of event that you couldn't do physically. You're not going to show up in the morning and then climb the elevation of Mount Everest in one day. Maybe it's a 3-day weekend event, but for the clientele and the cyclists that are involved with our events, it was something that was challenging for 50 days. And then we had badges where people did double summits, triple summits. So we were getting a lot of experienced cyclists that did climb. but again, it was just a challenge. We had a leaderboard. So yeah, I think we'll continue with those, and we're actually kind of changing out our entire warehouse now to have a fulfillment area for these packages that we'll send out. And then obviously we'll have our storage area and kind of physical event area that we work with physical events.
Awesome, great. Anything else, Sam? There is a question in here, but I'm going to hold it until Eric presents, because both you and Kate can answer it. So I'm going to hold that off. But anything else that you'd like to share about your event before we? No. Okay.
No, not too much. I mean, if anyone has any questions after, they can always email me. My email is just sam@bikesandbeers.com. Check out the website, bikesandbeers.com, and maybe we could see some of you guys at a physical event.
You should bring it to Colorado Springs. I'll be there.
We're working over that way.
Nice. All right, Chuck, if you can spotlight Eric. So Eric Hell is the director of the Domestic Elite Project Echelon Racing Team. This is one of our teams that do compete in our Pro Road Tour and other high-level road racing events in the US. The team is also a registered veterans nonprofit organization that works to educate, equip, and empower veterans through physical activity and self-discovery. And this nonprofit organization serves over 200 veterans, and they've donated $35,000 in the 2020 year. Eric has taken his love and passion for racing in person to now the virtual space with Echelon Racing Promotions, and views this virtual space as an untapped opportunity to not only grow the sport of cycling, but to promote it for all stakeholders. Eric, I'll turn it over to you.
And I got my guest, my dogs. So no, thank you very much, Tara, and thank you guys for having me. It's been really inspiring to hear the people before us speak about how they are keeping the sport of cycling alive. As you mentioned, I went ahead and I took my passion for racing in real life and brought it to the virtual world this year when COVID hit, because my riders didn't have a goal to work towards, and we didn't know when the season was going to start. We also started to see our race promoters kind of struggling to figure out how are they going to remain relevant, how are they going to continue to stay connected with their communities and with their sponsors and their supporters to ensure that they maintain those relationships and succeeded at a high level. And then likewise, trying to maintain that relationship with you all at USA Cycling. It's a trifecta. If we're not all working together, and if we don't maintain our presence in the sport, we risk losing it. And so I saw esports as a huge opportunity to keep our teams well connected with our races, and our races well connected with our governing body, and to keep all of that framework strong together. I will say that today I'm going to be focusing on racing, but we have transitioned the supports that we're offering to community rides and nonprofit events as well. Things like Ride Across America, we've been talking to MS 150, Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. Those types of events are things that we are starting to support through our virtual indoor events using a platform called RGT Cycling. So you're probably familiar with Zwift, and I'll tell you what's different about RGT Cycling and why that's our preferred platform for our mission statement of promoting in real life racing through the virtual space. You want to advance the slide? For those of you that don't know, esports is really a global phenomenon. It's one of the fastest growing industries in the world. And that includes, that includes YouTube, that includes movie production, what have you. Entertainment wise, esports is one of the fastest growing industries in the world. There's massive amounts of prize money, sponsorship, video and streaming opportunities within that space as well, if you want to advance. The thing that's interesting about it is that racing is only a small portion of that. And so we kind of have this big blue ocean scenario where the industry is well established. People understand it. People know how to market it. But racing is only a small part of it. and non-ball and stick sports are really, granted, Zwift had their the first ever virtual world championship event for an in real life sport this year. And that was a huge win for the sport of cycling. But in general, this is a new space, and we have an opportunity to make a really big difference and to lift cycling up to be on par with some of our other sports that have franchised, like Major League Baseball and the NFL, because of what esports brings to us. These are some of the events that we had the opportunity to work with this year so far. And so a number of you are on this call. I saw Jack and Bill Koch and I saw Rob Laybourne. So thank you guys for your support. They have been absolutely integral in our success. And they've been amazing partners in helping us to understand how to grow this for all stakeholders, how to make this accessible to communities, to economic development centers, to governments, local governments, and then to the racers themselves. For me, it was really important, as a domestic elite team and racing on the Pro Road Tour, to ensure the sustainability and success of those races, because without them, I don't have a team. And if I don't have a team, then I'm out of a job. And so, I want to see them succeed so that we can succeed together. With that, we put on amateur events the week before our professional events. So we have categories 1 through 4, and men and women. We have everything from one-day races to stage races to series competitions. And across the entire calendar, we have points-based GC competition as well. And so it works very much like the Pro Road Tour type points system. Categories, those points carry over from race to race for our amateur series as well. And something that I'm extremely excited about that's not on this list that we are going to be officially announcing in a press release on Monday is that with the Tour of America's Dairyland, we are opening up a whole new opportunity by offering a hand cycling series. So one of the things that we love about esports is it also creates greater opportunity for equity and accessibility within the sport. And the platform RGT Cycling is free. You don't have to pay a membership in order to participate in events. And so that is absolutely wonderful. But it has allowed us to allow women to have equal prize purses, to race the same distances on the same courses as the men, and now to make it accessible to our para athletes as well is something we're extremely proud of. Okay, this is going to be a video, so let me talk quick before you click on it to play it. We have partnered with some familiar people, with Brad Soner, Mark Zalewski, who's on the call and does our production. I didn't know if Brad was on or not. With Frankie Andreu as an announcer. And then we have a Canberra guy that actually lives in the UK. His name is Damon Bates from ZMS Livestream. And so we live stream these events, and it helps us to make in real life connections, right? We know that watching an avatar isn't the most compelling thing in the world, but when you know who's behind the avatar, that's what's exciting, is having those human interest stories. The other thing that is really wonderful about the RGT cycling platform is we get to race and ride on in real life courses. We use GPX files, we use Google Earth data to recreate those courses, turn for turn, elevation for elevation. And so these courses truly represent the races that we're riding in. And so here's a race recap from the Tour of the Gila.
Virtual Tour of the Gila heads up to Pinos Altos for Stage 3 of the Echelon Racing League stage race. About 80 kilometers of racing, mostly flat for the first part of the day before it really turns uphill on what is known as the Gila Monster Climb, heading up to Pinos Altos from Silver City. Women's race incredibly exciting, with the selection being made right around 50 kilometers to go into the stage. It went down to about 10 riders before Jacqueline Godby hit the front to separate that back down to 4. It started with 3 before they were eventually joined by the 4th rider in the group, which would be Eleanor Wiseman. She joins Megan Easler, Elena O'Mara, and UCI Esports World Champion roster member Jacqueline Godby. Now, Wiseman was the story for most of the day. She had real trouble trying to stay with the group several times, getting gapped off and then chasing back on before getting gapped off. It was a great battle to watch Wiseman try to stay in the group. The other 3 riders would throw attacks on the front just as Wiseman would get back, like here at 22 kilometers to go. And then you see Jackie Godby hit the front again, go into the orange and red power zones, and that was enough to put Wiseman in trouble again, getting dropped at 19K to go. At 16K to go, she chases back in one more time, is able to claw her way back into the group. She sits in as long as she can, but by 15K to go, she's back off the back. That would be the last time that we saw Wiseman in the group. Then Elena O'Mara hits the front and attacks in the closing kilometer of racing. Jackie Godby is the only one that could go with her, and this set up an awesome battle between O'Mara and Godby, the 2 riders leading the overall in the Echelon Racing League, with O'Mara first to go, but Godby catches her at 200 meters to go and launches a second attack over the top. Now, O'Mara was able to hang with her for about 50 meters, but a devastating attack at 100 meters to go leaves O'Mara behind as Godby goes on to solo for the win, with Elena O'Mara having to hold on for second. Now, a big win for Jacqueline Godby ahead of the UCI Esports World Championships coming up, as she gets a nice celebration in, and Elena O'Mara enjoying the ride. So Godby with several wins under her belt as she gets ready to represent the United States at the upcoming.
All right, so it really creates a really unique opportunity when we do the broadcast piece to do storytelling, to do interviews, to see these riders in their homes doing these events. Clearly, the events are branded, so we can bring in real life branding. We can bring in real life elements, whether it's signage that you see entering. You'd get a sign that says now entering the Gila Monster or something along those lines. It also offers opportunity to do branding and sponsorship. One of the really cool things about it, you can see the riders' names in chalk on the road. So there's a lot of personalization that can happen within this that makes it unique and something different than joining, a meetup on another platform. So one of the keys for this, right? One of the things that brings value is visibility for your race and for your partners. The broadcast has been a huge piece of that for us. We also have a virtual photographer. She lives in British Columbia, and she does all of our in-race photography for us. And as you all know, especially for our charity ride events, people love to be able to see themselves, to post that picture, and to showcase, the physical feat that they just completed. And so trying to bring all of those in real life elements that make us excited and proud and energized to participate in those events to the virtual space. And we feel that we've successfully been able to do that so far. And we continue to iterate and take feedback from our community to make it better as we go forward. If you want to advance. Yep. What's been really exciting for us is really the amount of traction that we've been able to get. So here's just a broad level overview of some of the data. We look at Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and aggregate all of those together, but we're kind of averaging right now right around 70,000 interactions, whether that's views or active engagements, meaning comments, liking or following per event. And so we're growing at a rapid rate, and this viewership has opened up additional sponsor opportunities, has opened up additional opportunities to build relationships with communities. We just did the Joe Martin stage race this past week, and we worked very, very closely with their Regional Economic Development Center. And it's opened doors and conversations with their state park service about virtual tourism. So things that we didn't think about before are now certainly coming to light, and we're seeing a lot of success in that. If you want to advance. Another thing that's been interesting is our demographic breakdown. I think it's relatively representative of just what we see in real life participation with regards to the size of our fields and which fields tend to be largest. One of the things that we want to work more on is obviously engaging that 18 to 24 age group in our viewership and engagements and interaction. But that age group in particular, we have a pretty good representation with participation in our events, but we want to figure out, okay, how do we capture them as viewers and build an audience with them as well. So just want to share some things that that we've learned. We've learned that social media and the opportunity to cross promote, especially when we're building authentic content like interviews and images and live streams, is extremely powerful. It helps everybody involved to do things like cross post video. It's going to reach far more people. Your viewership's going to grow and your participation is going to grow because of it. So don't be afraid to explore those opportunities and to reach out to social media promotional companies that know how to leverage those platforms best, because there's a ton of untapped tools that I wasn't aware of until I got into this. Valuing human interest stories. If you're going to do virtual events and virtual broadcasts, again, watching an avatar on a screen isn't that interesting. Knowing who's behind the avatar on the screen and what's got them to this place and why they're participating today is something that's compelling and inspiring, and people they crave. That's what they want more of. In virtual racing, in virtual events, period, governance is necessary. We have worked with USA Cycling. We've worked with the RGT cycling platform, and we've worked with the community to build our own eBio passport platform, where people can upload their data, they can do their dual recording. You might be familiar with Zwift Power. This is Zwift Power with 2 or 3 more layers to it. And so we can really look at the data, and we can make it transparent to everybody that has an account as well. You can choose to hide your profile if you'd like, and only share it with race promoters. So there's those options. The community has wonderful perspectives, and we need to listen to them. They have great ideas, and this is a relatively young venue. And so just opening your doors to taking that feedback and being constructive with it, and leveraging the strengths of the people around you too. People are extremely passionate about helping us build web pages and results platforms and those types of things. And so when they can do it from the comfort of their own home, volunteering in that space is quite a bit easier ask than having them come out and sit on a corner for 8 to 10 hours sometimes. And this is an extremely highly cost-effective means to engage, again, whether it's your sponsors, your community, or your users, your riders, your participants. Where we're going, we want to continue to expand this to have global regions and run something similar to a Premier League, where regions compete against one another in these leagues, and then we narrow it down to have a championship at the end of the year. Right now, we already have a revenue share model in place with our teams. We want to continue to grow that on a grander scale. Hopefully we can get something like a Red Bull TV or an ESPN or Discovery Channel to carry our events, and we can share that revenue with teams through merchandising and those types of things as well. We continue to work with our national governing bodies, probably at some point the UCI even, on governance and consulting around that to make sure that these races are truly fair and accessible to everybody. And again, we really want to look to expand into local association events and putting on smaller series. It doesn't have to be a big grandiose thing. We can do this on the full continuum of just a practice event to a race series to the full kit and caboodle with a broadcast like you saw. But we want to make that available to all of our events. And then one of the things as a race director or a race promoter, a team director that I'm extremely excited about is the opportunity to do race recon, because it is just taking a GPX file and putting it into the RGT system, it allows for me to have my team ride on a virtual platform together and preview the course that they're going to be riding on before we actually get to the race. I think about people for the bikes and beers. There's some people that are probably nervous about coming to those events because they don't know if they can handle the 30 miles. And you could offer them the GPX file ahead of time, give them the opportunity to pre-ride that, to get confidence in that, to work towards the goal of completing that before the actual event, so that on event day they're successful and they have a great time. And so we want to be able to support that type of success for participants in this space as well. So it's ever evolving. We're really excited about some of the big announcements that we have coming soon with races that I never anticipated being in contact with. I can't share it yet, but it is coming. And I thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to share it with you. And I hope we can find ways to support you and help your events as well. I just dropped my name, email, and website in the chat.
Great, thanks, Eric. So we do have a couple of questions, but I do want to mention my mom is 76 years old, and she's not a super active person, but we were able to take part in a virtual run walk event last year together across the country, and it was a wonderful experience. She received her first ever sporting event medal. She was super and is super proud of having that and having completed the challenge. And I just use that as an example to think of how the virtual space can be really good for our sport of cycling, to get beginners in and to have those people who are nervous about competing or even just riding outside. You know, there's a number of people. My friend was hit by a car and she won't ride outside anymore, but she certainly takes part in Zwift races and training rides. And I think it's really, really cool that we now have another outlet to get people involved in the sport that we love.
Yeah, we, as our nonprofit, we work with a lot of veterans with paralysis, traumatic brain injury, PTSD, some of whom will be competing in our hand cycling events. But competing alongside the pros, being on a broadcast, like that was something they never, I mean, it's just not accessible to them otherwise. And so we're opening that door and really giving them something to be hopeful for. And it's really exciting.
All right, so some questions, and Eric, you answered this in your presentation. So Kate and Sam, this is for you, and Eric, feel free to add beyond what you said in your presentation. But you know, if you are moving your in-person event where there's sometimes sponsorship activations, charity activations, how did you do that in the virtual realm? So how did you support your charity? So Sam, you talked about some of the funds that you raised, but how are you also supporting your sponsors of your events?
I mean, one of the biggest is always just click-throughs online. They want exposure, so we, as kind of a substitute to having the product there physically at an event or signage at the event on the starting line, we put them on checkout process pages, obviously homepage. We supported them a little bit more in 2020 since so many of them took that chance at the beginning of the year, and then this all happened. So that was big. But for so many product sponsors, it is about the product in hand. So we did include them in all of the swag packages, which logistically was difficult for some things because it just adds weight to a package, and we're sending out 20,000 packages and it costs $4 more because we're putting a can of cold brew coffee in there. It added up, but I think they were very grateful, and we actually re-upped all of our sponsors from 2020 and even increased some for 2021. So I think they were beyond grateful for the chance. And it was also great because they were able to, in a way, it was almost better because when you're at a physical event, there's so many things going on. You might not have a chance to get over to a sponsor booth, or you might not know what it is on a sign or something like that. But if you're getting a package in the mail, you're opening it, you're looking at everything in there. We put in like inserts with coupon codes to go online and get 20% off their products, confirmation emails with links. So those are all options that that worked really well. And we use special promo codes with those sponsors just to track how many conversions and how many orders we were getting directly from those packages. And I know, you know, just from talks with those companies, they did very well.
We did the same thing that Sam was talking about. We had all of our sponsors include items in our gift bags that we mailed to all of our riders. A lot of those we got to do locally, which was great. So something that does help if you are able to do it in person is that we still did our packet pickup physically. So we paired with a bunch of different bike shops all around the metro area and delivered the packages there. And then our riders were still able to go out into the shops and go pick up their packages. That was just available to us at the time, and the shops were still open. That was really great for the shops that we partnered with, because obviously they got extra people coming into the shops. And then we also did, kind of similar to what Sam was talking about, we actually did a virtual swag bag, which is something that I'm implementing in all of my events, where our sponsors can include something, either a coupon code or a code for a free item that our riders could go on and use on their website as well. And then that was in a thank you email. So the thank you email included all of the pictures from the ride, as well as like this virtual swag bag that people could open and have all of the codes.
Awesome. And then how did you two talk about your charities that you were supporting?
So for ours, it was mostly just on the website. And then in the confirmation email, we, you know, gave them a shout out, talked about it. And then I thought that throughout the ride, we were emailing all of the participants with updated donation amounts, which people loved. So like once we hit 5,000 riders, we sent out an email to those 5,000 riders with a receipt of the check that was donated, and a thank you from the charity. So it was just I think it actually helped increase participation, because people could see in real time how many dollars were being donated, and they were recruiting friends. But short answer was mostly on our website.
We are obviously the charity, so we are the organization that's putting on the ride. And so for us, fundraising is just ingrained in absolutely everything we do. But one of the things that we really highlighted, all of our riders actually get an automatic fundraising page set up for them. So whether they choose to be a fundraising rider or not, our ride gives you the option to do either. So you can register for a lower price and choose to fundraise $250, or you can just pay the flat registration fee and choose not to fundraise. But regardless of which way you register, you're automatically given a registration page for fundraising. And so we set up automatic emails to send to people at different intervals. So, you know, of course you register and you get a ton of information immediately, but 9 days after you register for the ride, you get another email that says, here's how to set up your fundraiser page. And then 11 days after, it's, hey, have you set up that fundraiser page? Here's some tips about how to share information on how to fundraise, and then doing those regular updates about how much we had fundraised for the organization. And just highlights for us, it's really about our scholars. So doing email highlights once a month in our emails about our scholars and about what you're supporting by joining Venus to Miles.
Sorry, I was on mute there. And Eric, how do you talk about Project Echelon while you're actually racing in, you know, RGT land?
Yeah, with the broadcast, we have the ability to bring in everything from, you know, commercials to have live interviews. You know, like I said, we had the lieutenant governor come into the tour of the Gila and speak to us, and a state senator, Joe Martin stage race. We had some similar personalities not personalities, that's the wrong word, but stakeholders from the community as well. And I know that, you know, tomorrow I'll be on the broadcast and highlighting the fact that we'll be putting on hand cycling events with the Tour of America's Dairyland. And so, you know, it puts it out in front of thousands of people to be able to speak to your mission and to really share the impact that it has on people across the country.
Awesome. And so another question came through. I think as event organizers who run in-person events, we kind of know what our expenses are going to be, right? Like we know how much fencing is going to cost. We know how much it's going to cost to print signage out. But what was the financial impact of moving from in-person to virtual? And Kate, do you want to start us off?
Ooh, that's a good one. I just looked at our numbers recently. I would say for us, certainly the biggest financial impact, and I think that Sam would probably agree, was the shipping, moving from having our in-person packets to being able to ship the packets. So we did ship, obviously I mentioned earlier that we did some packet pickup at local locations, and that certainly saved us as well. But I think that the final cost ended up, we did a lot of USPS shipping in flat rate boxes. And I think that it ended up being pretty near, if I'm not wrong, pretty close to $10,000 of shipping for, which maybe for Sam is not huge, but for, for having less than 1,000 riders was pretty impactful for us. So that was a big change. And then again, just making sure that our sponsors had the opportunity to get their logos out there. So we included their logos on some more custom merchandise that we helped invest in as well in response to their sponsorship dollars.
Yeah, for us, it was definitely shipping. That was a huge one. I never thought I'd spend so much money with the Postal Service, but shipping, and then, I mean, labor was a little bit different. It was really just, at some point it scales properly where, right, so a physical event, there's all these fixed costs, whereas with a virtual event, it's more, you're paying for every single person, as opposed to like, if you have an event with 700 people, it's not going to cost that much more to do 800 people. Whereas virtually, you're paying for every single person kind of the same amount. And then marketing was expensive as well. Usually our conversions on Facebook for physical events, I mean, people see bikes and beers, and we have photos of, hundreds of cyclists, and it just looks like a fun event. So we usually get like 8 to 10 cent link clicks, which is pretty good for an event on Facebook. Whereas the virtual event, again, it was just a kind of a learning curve for people, and a lot, I think, didn't understand what it was, or, they had seen so many virtual events flooding their Facebook feeds. So we were up at about 80 cent link clicks for the virtual event. So really it was marketing, Facebook, and shipping.
Eric, what about you? Obviously, you have commentators on your production. So, what was the financial impact of having these virtual races?
Yeah, it opened up actually more marketing opportunities and publicity opportunities than most in real life events have the opportunity to make. And you're not paying per sign. You're not paying to close down corners or to have police. And so I think it had a very positive financial impact. The cost can be, again, because of the spectrum on which we can offer events, could be anywhere from $500 for an event to $7,500 for an event. But the opportunity to sell sponsorship above and beyond that is pretty extravagant, and we've seen success with that. We've also worked with having paid entry fees and doing entries based on a scale. So if you pay the minimum of $5, you get to enter, but if you pay $100, you get put into a raffle for an opportunity to have free entry and free housing at next year's event or something like that. So it's just allowed us to be more creative with event organizers because there's not the limitations of physical space and physical things.
Great, and we're really close to the end of the session, but I do have one more question that I want to address. Eric, this might not apply so much to you, but I am, and we are interested in hearing your answer to this. So Kate and Sam, did you feel that there was any risk associated with running an event virtually where folks were maybe out on the road without the protection of road signage saying there were cyclists on the road, or security of police vehicles, etc.? Did you feel there was any risk associated in running your event virtually?
For me, no more than just riding on your own in general, because we didn't provide routes for those events. So once we transitioned it to a virtual event, we said, ride in at your favorite place. So I think the issues of a physical event when we would host them is someone driving 3 hours and not being familiar with the roads or where they're riding. So if it's not properly marked off, or there's not a course marshal at, a certain spot, they might get lost. Whereas with this, it was, no no more unsafe than if someone was just riding on their favorite route that they ride every day.
I think I'd agree with Sam. The other thing for us is that because we saw so many women ride together, so even if you were not riding in a large group, even if you were riding with one other friend, I feel like there is a little bit of safety in numbers. And then we also did bib numbers. So I don't think I mentioned this earlier, but we still mailed bibs to everybody so that you had your bib. And I feel like that helps a little bit with visibility on the road. People are aware that something is going on, which helped a little bit.
I didn't have as much of a fear of somebody falling off their rollers or a trainer or something like that. It hasn't happened yet. It'll happen at some point in time. Somebody will ride through their TV, I'm sure. But, you know, one of the fears that I did have was that this could negatively impact our in real life events. And I can tell you that I wouldn't be here doing this if I thought that was going to be the case, but it was still a possible outcome. I think we've seen the opposite. I think we've seen people who've never heard of some of these events who have never had the opportunity to participate in them, either be inspired to want to go. A good example, Bruce Bird, 52 years old, won a stage of Joe Martin and had an excellent breakaway opportunity at Redlands, and just wrote us and said, these are dream races that I got into the sport too late. I never got to race them as a pro. Thank you for the opportunity. And so, or teams in the UK wanting to come to the US now to do these events because they raced them and they were successful in them. And so I think it's had a positive effect. I think time will confirm that. But that was my only really hesitation with it.
Great. Well, thank you, the three of you. I think everything that you've done is an innovation to our sport of cycling, and I'm curious to see how you all continue it down the road when we do get back to normal. Overall, thank you all for joining us for these 2 days. I know sitting in front of the computer for several hours each day listening to presentations can be sometimes hard. I hope you all have some takeaways that you're going to bring back to your events. We will send out the recordings once we have them uploaded to our website. We'll also send you out some contact information for our presenters in case you have any follow-up questions. And we'll also send you a post-conference survey. We do want to hear your feedback on how this went. We are going to be doing regular event organizer education webinars. My plan is that they happen every 6 weeks. We'll most likely be using the Zoom platform. I did have a poll, but since we're a little bit over, I'll skip that. The survey will ask you what topics you'd like us to host during these webinars. So if it's sponsorship, we'll help get a speaker or two on sponsorships. If it's how to make your event more inclusive, we're happy to talk about that as well. So please do fill that out. And then lastly, I did want to do a little bit of advertising for myself and for USA Cycling. We do have an opening for a national events manager that will oversee our road national championships and then help out with our other national championships as well. So I'm actually going to drop a link to that job posting. If you're interested, please apply. If you know someone who would be a good fit, please pass that link along. We're very busy here. I would love to fill the position as quickly as possible. So please help me spread the word on that. I'd really appreciate it. Again, thank you all. It was wonderful seeing you in person. We have all gone too long without seeing each other at bike races or bike events across the country. So thank you all and enjoy your weekend.